Next up for UConn is the start of Big East play, and this year opening things up at home at the XL Center against Xavier on Wednesday night. So joining me today, he's been on for the past few years. I'm sure you're familiar with him. It's Adam Baum of the Sean Miller podcast. So Adam, thanks so much for coming on.
Jared, thanks for having me back, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already conference play. It feels like I feel like we still should be having another 2 or 3 weeks of non-conference play, but here it is.
I know it got here in a hurry. I'm excited for it. I love Big East play.
I know this non-conference schedule for Xavier has certainly featured its sets of ups and downs, and we could get into injury talk and stuff like that later. But outside of the injury updates we've got, how would you say this non-conference schedule has fared for Xavier as we look to head towards Big East play?
It certainly didn't go the way they wanted it to go. I think coming into the season, like watching them prepare in the summer, the fall, watching their exhibition at Dayton, I think all signs were pointing towards a team that had a bunch of experience, that had depth, that looked ready for the start of the season. And then the games came and they were real. And it was like, okay, they struggled to get by Texas Southern. They struggled with IU Indy. They really struggled with South Carolina State. All those are bye games at home. So those weren't good things. And then the golden opportunities that they had, Michigan on a neutral floor, at TCU, at Cincinnati, those are the games that got away from them, right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting here and Xavier is 8-3. They don't have a bad loss, but they haven't necessarily racked up the impressive non-conference resume that you would have hoped. And now they find themselves, with injury trouble and they're going into Big East play and they got a lot of work to do if they want to make the NCAA tournament.
I know there were really high expectations for this Xavier team coming into this season, expecting them to compete towards the top of the Big East. What do you think's, kind of been an issue or two for them as they've gone through this non-conference slate that's maybe hampered and kind of had to maybe reevaluate those expectations a little bit?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me has been like they thought they were going to have a bunch of depth, like really quality depth, nine deep and, not much of a drop off when you go to your bench. And that depth hasn't really materialized. Part of it is injury related. Part of it is just like guys that they were depending on to be more productive, to be more consistent. They haven't really found that footing yet. So I think that's kind of been a difficult thing for this team right now to navigate is when you come into a season and you think, man, we got nine guys that we can play pretty consistently that are interchangeable. And then Lassina Traore tears his ACL and he's done for the year. And he was going to be their starting five man. And, some other guys that they were looking at and relying on, Trey Green has taken an indefinite leave of absence. And today, the Zach Freemantle news is just another brutal blow. They're going to be without him for an indefinite period of time. So it's like all of that to say that this team does not have that much depth. And now they're essentially down two starters going into Big East play.
If you want to not be all doom and gloom here and look at some of the bright side from the non-conference play, what has this Xavier team done well that they can look to build on heading into Big East play?
Well, I think, like the Wake Forest game was a great example of what it looks like when Xavier plays the way they want to play up to their expectations at both ends of the floor, right? Same with that excuse me, same with the South Carolina game where those two games in particular, they won those games with their defense. And
Mhm.
this was a team coming into the season where I would have said, man, they should be well suited to outscore a bunch of teams. So I think that they have been pretty good defensively and been able to win some games against high major opponents with that end of the floor. And then, I think offensively, they're still a work in progress. They've got a lot of different guys who can put the ball in the hoop. It's kind of been finding that rhythm and that flow with all these new guys together that I think has been a little bit of a challenge. But as the season goes on, that would be one thing that I would think, the more games they get, the more, now we're into Big East play, and it's like every night's going to be a war and a battle. And it's like at some point, I think that offense has to start clicking the way that we anticipated it would.
I think if you had to take a look in the prep that Dan and his staff are doing heading into this Xavier game, I'm guessing Zach Freemantle was the guy they had circled on the scouting report as they were prepping for Wednesday. With him not in there, who's the guy or the couple guys that the coaching staff should be redirecting their efforts towards as they look at the Xavier team?
Yeah, I think it's probably got to be Ryan Conwell. He's their best shooter. He's a guy that, if you give him a bunch of open looks, he's probably going to make them hurt. That would be one. But then the reality is like Davion McKnight has kind of been hit or miss, but he's another guy that on a given night he can go for 20 points. Marcus Foster, the transfer from Furman, like he's been a really consistent player, but offensively he has a tendency to sometimes disappear in games. So I think if I was UConn and I was preparing for Xavier on Wednesday night without Zach Freemantle, I would say I'm going to make everyone else on the team beat me with the exception of Ryan Conwell.
Yeah. With the loss of Fremantle, how do you see this team adjusting, and what do they do differently now without having a guy like that out on the court?
Yeah, well, I mean that's why, this news that they got today is never good.
Yeah.
I think at the point in the schedule when they're getting it, it makes it even worse, right? You just lost the crosstown shootout,
Yeah.
quick turnaround before you got to go to UConn, back-to-back defending national champions. Um, I think that for them, it's like a guy like John Hughley is going to have to step up. He's probably going to be their starting five man now. He's really been like a rotational guy who's played, 10 minutes a game. You're going to need a lot more out of him. Then Jerome Hunter,
Yeah.
who's, been coming off the bench. He might still come off the bench. I don't know. But they're going to need him to play with experience, play impactful minutes going forward. And I think the reality of Xavier's situation right now is you lose Lucina Traore, you lose Zach Freemantle. They really only have one traditional big left on their roster, and that's John Hughley. So I think this is a team that's going to have to rely on small ball for the foreseeable future.
Looking to add some local flavor to your lineup? Martin Rosals is the MVP of your game day spread and a slam dunk for any occasion. Proudly made in hard-hitting New Britain, their famous kielbasa and hot dogs have been a fan favorite for over 96 years. You can find their products in grocery stores across the state or have them delivered directly to your home court, coast to coast, via martinrosal.com. Take your taste buds to the championship and go support a UConn fan-owned business. Definitely going to be interesting to see how they adjust. I mean, you lose a guy like this, you hope you have a couple bye games or what to try to work things out. But you go UConn and Marquette now back to back. That's tough. It's like when UConn lost Donovan Clingan last year, heading into the start of Big East play there, and trying to adjust on the fly there is never easy. Um, I know you know Sean Miller well. You work with him a lot. It seems like just from the comments he said last year, that loss they took at the XL Center where they just got drubbed, really stuck with him in that team, throughout the season. You think that motivates them a bit heading into this game on Wednesday night, knowing, hey, we're going back to the same building. We got run off the court. Let's see if we could do something different this year.
I think there's a lot of motivating factors. I think that's part of it. I think the fact that you just lost your most important player, you're arguably your best player. Then the other part of it is like no one's going to be giving you a chance now,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you're going to UConn without Zach Freemantle. You guys are going to like all of those things. I think have to play into what's going on in between this team's ears right now. Is that there's their back is kind of against the wall right now. You look at their metrics where they're at in the net. Yeah, they are 8-3, but this is very much a team that has to find a way to win some big games. And their first opportunity is on Wednesday night in Hartford.
Yeah. How tough of a stretch is this for them? I mean, obviously you've got the big rivalry game that they had on Saturday, and then UConn, and then Marquette. I mean, it just even if they were completely healthy right now, still seems like a stretch that would be really tough for any team.
Yeah, actually, my co-host on the podcast, Paul Fritzner, he threw a stat at me today. I think it was in terms of overall Ken Palm rating that this stretch at UC, at UConn, Marquette is the toughest three-game stretch that Xavier has had in like 15 years, just based off Ken Palm rankings. So this is like a very important, impactful point in the season. It's before the Christmas break, and you just lost your leading scorer and your leading rebounder to a
Yeah.
lower body injury. So it's like things are not looking, the way they want them to look right now. But if there's anything I know about Sean Miller and about his staff and the guys on this team is that they're going to keep battling, right? Like they had a
Yeah.
down year last year and they fought till the very end. They took that, 40 point whatever loss to UConn in this same building last year and still found a way to win some games after that. So that I'm looking on Wednesday night to see how eager they are to kind of get back on track and maybe silence some doubt.
Yeah, no, from a Xavier perspective, because I know I've been there where I've watched my team where guys have gone down and you're like, hey, like obviously we still want to win the game, but here's maybe like one or two things, even if we can't pull out the win that I want to see out of the team as they try to fight back and kind of adjust to life without this player. What do you think Xavier wants to see out of this team? Obviously outside of the win, but hey, if you leave Hartford saying, hey, maybe we played a close game or was a little bit more competitive than we thought it would be given the injury. What are a couple of those areas they'd be like satisfied to some extent leaving with?
Yeah, I think for this team, right, like if you want to talk about something that I think has plagued them early on in the year, it's been, rebounding and turnovers. So I think to show that they're still in the fight, that they still have some juice left, like go to UConn and take care of the basketball and battle on the glass, right? And
Yeah.
even if you come up short, like those are some things you can point to and you could say hey, like this team's still in it, that they still have what it takes. So those are kind of two easy answers. But beyond that, I would say like some of these guys who have struggled off the bench for Xavier, like now is your time to really step
Yeah.
up and show what you can do. So I'm looking at guys like Dante Maddox and John Hughley and Cam Fletcher, who's really only played in one game so far this year, but now, it's 6'7", a guy who can rebound the ball, a guy that has size, like he's going to be called upon quite a bit more. So I'm kind of looking, those are the things that I'm looking at on Wednesday night.
Yeah, of those bench guys who now have that opportunity to stand up and play a little bit more, who would you like to see make the biggest impact from that group, or who do you think can make that biggest impact?
Well, I think for me, it's probably Jerome Hunter. And my evidence for that would be 2 years ago when Xavier went to the Sweet 16, Sean's first season back at
Yeah.
Xavier. Zach Freemantle basically he broke his foot in late January, and they didn't have him for the final 15 games of the season. And the guy who filled his shoes was Jerome Hunter, and he played really well. He did exactly what the team needed him to do. He played defense, he rebounded, he finished around the basket. Those are the little things that I think Jerome has done before, and they're going to need him to do those things again.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a really interesting. It was always going to be an interesting matchup on Wednesday, but very curious to see what this looks like now, given the injury news and seeing who's going to step up on this Xavier team. I've got to say, like, if you've got UConn Marquette, on the front end of things here, it does mean as the season goes along, schedule should lighten up a little bit, and maybe you get a chance to get Freemantle back, depending on how things ultimately end up playing out. Does that give Xavier fans a little bit of hope thinking about things as the season goes along?
For sure. I mean, I think like if you were to take the collective pulse on Xavier's fan base right now, like it's not great, you know. You lost a game at TCU that you were very much in control of, that you kind of gave away at the end. You were in control at Cincinnati in the crosstown shootout, and you couldn't close that one out. And now today, everyone wakes up and around lunchtime they find out that Zach Freemantle's out. So I think that the fan base is pretty down right now, but the truth is, like, they still have 20 games left, 21 if you count Madison Square Garden at the end. And, they got to find a way to get going and get on a run. And ultimately, like, you got to start winning some big games. They don't have a quad one win yet. So there's an opportunity on Wednesday night to do that.
Yeah. Well, Adam, I appreciate you taking some time here to come on help break down this game. I know it's been a crazy news day, so thanks for being able to make some time and come on. And UConn fans, even though he's working on Xavier content, definitely check out all his stuff because they're doing some really cool stuff over on the Sean Miller pod. So plug the pod quickly before you head out.
Yeah, Sean Miller podcast. You can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts. Our YouTube channel is kind of where everything goes right now. We're also doing a season-long docu-series, kind of a version of Hard Knocks, documenting Xavier's season. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a crazy amount of work. We literally were doing this with three people. But it's pretty cool, right? Like I can't ever remember a full in-season, season-long docu-series behind the scenes style thing for a college basketball
Yeah.
program. So it's been pretty cool. And obviously, a lot of what happens is out of our control, but we have a responsibility to document the season. So
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens, and we're there to capture it.
Well, if Dan Hurley hears about this, maybe the Connecticut scoreboard's got to go inside next year with the UConn team. You inspire us here.
There you go. That'd be a great idea.
But before I let you go, just from what you've done as part of this work following the team to this point this season, give us like an interesting nugget or something that's like surprised you as you've been diving into things.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say like the thing that has surprised me the most is that I think if you watch Sean Miller coach, right, you think he's this just all the time intense dude. I think I've been really surprised by the amount of moments when just like his humanity shines
Yeah.
through, right? Like when they're in team meetings and he's interacting with the guys, and it's like, yeah, this is a guy who played college basketball in the Big East way back in the day. And yeah, now he's a coach and he's got this resume and this pedigree and he's done all these things. But at the end of the day, I've been like really shocked at just how normal he is on a day-to-day basis, really. I'm sure Dan Hurley's like that too, right? Like he's probably someone who gets, a lot of grief and a lot of flack for the way he acts during basketball games, but you're getting to see 1% of who he is in those
Right,
games.
yeah.
There's way more to him than just that. So I think that's kind of been the most illuminating thing.
All right. Well, UConn fans, go check out the content. Sounds like really cool stuff you're doing. So, Adam, appreciate the time. Looking forward to seeing you in town on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll be there, man. I'm looking forward to it too.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jared.